This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Real quick, I'm bringing back the Fantasy Football League. So if you want to join Fantasy Football, here's what you have to do. If you're currently a member or a part of the Patreon, all you have to do is just comment, or I'll leave a post up for Fantasy Football and comment on that post and tell me that you want to join the league so I can get your information and send the league invite to the email address that you have associated with your Patreon or your YouTube membership. If you are not a member, if you are not a Patreon and you want to join the Fantasy Football League, then join. Become a member, become a Patreon member, or become a YouTube member, and then comment on the post down there. All those posts will be available as this video is posted. So again, if you want to join Fantasy Football, let me know now. I got to know now because drafts are going to start pretty soon here. And I want to be able to know how many leagues I have to create, how many people want to join, and all of that other information. Also, if you're a Dog Check tier member, you already got the invite link. So that's what's going to happen there. If you want early access, the Dog Check tier members get that first. They get priority. But if you want to just join the Fantasy Football League, you can just sign up for the Patreon. Let me know you want to be in it, and I'll make it there. We'll make as many leagues as we need to in order to make this work. But thank you. Now let's get back to the video. All right. So the news for today is that the Cleveland Browns have brought in Shelby Harris, veteran defensive tackle, on a visit. Now, again, visits don't necessarily guarantee that that player signs there. It doesn't guarantee that the Browns are going to sign that player, nor does it guarantee that the interest is at that point with Shelby Harris either, right? They both have options to look at. But what it does mean, and for the first time in 3 years, and I talked about this since Andrew Berry, we've been talking about them needing to bring in a veteran defensive tackle. They have to bring in a veteran defensive tackle every camp, right? But they never really do bring in the veteran defensive tackle. Well, this is about as serious as they've gotten at this point in camp with when it comes to going in that direction. A visit, while it doesn't guarantee that you get that player, it does mean that there is an interest in the market for a player there. So Shelby Harris, Matt Ioannidis, Brandon Williams, these guys are all kind of on the board here. I think it would probably be between Matt Ioannidis or Shelby Harris. If I had to guess, they tend to prefer their defensive linemen that they don't draft. Well, that's not Siaki Ika, to be about 300 pounds. Shelby and Matt Ioannidis kind of fit that profile. So let's kind of talk about both of these players. Let's talk about Shelby Harris. What kind of player has he been? What kind of player will he be? And what would that mean for the Cleveland Browns? Because we've talked about this before, that the Cleveland Browns are really, really thin at defensive tackle, especially since Perion Winfrey's no longer on the team, especially since you don't know the reliability of somebody like Maurice Hurst. You're really in a tough situation here if you're the Cleveland Browns. So let's look at the roster real quick. This is the Browns roster, PFF grades. And one thing I want to point out is that Dalvin Tomlinson sitting at a 77 PFF grade. Now, again, PFF grades aren't gospel. They aren't the end all be all, but they are something to measure off of. They're kind of like a Wikipedia page when it comes to like doing research, right? You start at the PFF grade, you look at the tape, you look at some of the advanced numbers, and then you try to make your opinion up from all of that. But this is just kind of a jumping off point. And what I'm pointing out here is that, look, after Dalvin Tomlinson, you get Tristan Hill, who's a 60 PFF grade, I think off of only 229 snaps last year, so not even a qualifying grade. And then it gets straight up abysmal, right? Michael Dunfauer, 36.5, Jordan Elliott, 40. He's had 40 grades 3 years in a row. Tommy Togiai, 40 grades 2 years in a row. It's straight up abysmal. behind these guys. And while I trust Jim Schwartz, while I trust Andrew Barry and all of that, this is one area in which they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt, at least the front office. And Jim Schwartz is a great coach. He's not a miracle maker. He's not going to make Jordan Elliott go from a 40 to an 80. Like, that's just not happening, right? So you look at these grades. Maurice Hurst ungraded. He's pretty decent when he plays, but again, when he plays, massive if. So that's where they're at with defensive tackle. They brought in Matt Shelby. Well, not Shelby Harris, my bad. I don't know why I said Matt Shelby. Shelby Harris. And you look, he would be a 73 grade last year. That will automatically put him at a extremely better tier than what they were last year, right? We could look at these grades from a week to week basis. He was all right. If you look at his overall grades, he graded out as a decent run defender, a pretty mediocre pass rusher. So he'll help in those medium down situations. Another veteran in the room. He'll be 32 years old. Usually that's a little old for this team, but given the fact that this is a win now team, I think it's fine. If you look at his overall career, look here at the bottom. Let me pull it up right here. So he has been on a pretty flat trajectory, right? Had that 90 grade in Denver in 2018, went down to a 76, all the way up to an 88 in 2020, which was the best year of his career. And then he had the worst year of his career after that in 2021. And it kind of, remetabolized. He kind of reestablished himself at 73.2 last year again. Throughout his career, he's been more of a run defender, or more consistent as a run defender. Not necessarily the super pass rusher that you need outside of having a couple of good seasons as a pass rusher. He did have a 7-sack season in 2021. And how many pressures was that? Well, that's PFF sacks. So PFF don't count half sacks. So that's probably not the official sack number. So that's Shelby Harris. Just in case they sign Shelby Harris before this video gets out or right after this video gets out, here's what I would think of the Browns potentially bringing in and signing Shelby Harris. I think it would be a solid signing. I think you need more defensive tackle depth. I brought this up in the defensive tackle position room review, that you're basically one injury to Dalvin Tomlinson away from being in the same exact position that you were in years past. Now, Shelby Harris, he's not going to be like adding another Dalvin Tomlinson. This would be more like having, remember when we had like, what was his name? Malik Jefferson? Or somebody like that. Yeah, he played with Shelby Harris, actually. It would be kind of like that. Or Malik Jackson, where we had like a cheap kind of over-the-hill veteran to kind of play for the team on the last years of his career. This would be what it is. It would be good in the sense that, hey, you have Shelby Harris. That's a guy who's going to start next to Dalvin Tomlinson. And then with the young guys, you're just worried about depth and rotational pieces. So Siaki Ika and things like that. So that would be cool. I like that option personally better than the option of hoping Siaki Ika works out. Me personally, I'm just not a big fan of the prospect. Then hoping Jordan Elliott works out, then hoping Tommy Togiai works out, then hoping Maurice Hurst stays healthy, right? Because all of these things outside of Siaki Ika, who's going to get his opportunity in limited snaps, all of those other things have proven to kind of go the other way, right? As much as I want Maurice Hurst to have a great year this year, as much as I want Maurice Hurst to stay healthy, the odds are overwhelmingly that he's not, if you look at his career history. Now, he could have a healthy year. We had the same concerns about Jadeveon Clowney, and injuries never ended up being the big deal with Jadeveon. Everything else that came with Jadeveon ended up being the big deal. So maybe the injuries aren't going to be a big deal with Maurice Hurst, and he gets out there, he's able to play fine. Then cool, you have Shelby Harris, you have him, you have Dalvin Tomlinson, you have what resembles to be a good room, a older room. You need to have a young guy step up, probably a Siaki Ika, right? But a room, and you could do something with that, right? And right now, my concern is you got Dalvin Tomlinson. Maybe you have Maurice Hurst. Maybe you have Siaki Ika, and right? You get a guy like Shelby Harris or Matt Ioannidis, and you will be in a fine situation. Let's talk about Matt Ioannidis, who would be kind of on the flip side of the coin. Shelby Harris is more of a run defender. From everything I hear, Matt Ioannidis is more of a pass rusher. A lot of people like him. He's a little younger at 29. I could tell you right now, I could care less how old whoever they sign at defensive tackle is, if it's a 1-year solution, right? Because the fact is, you're not signing anybody in late July, early August to be under a 3-year contract. You're signing these guys to be under 1-year deals. You're signing these guys to be quick fixes. You're signing these guys to just be on the team for 1 year. So who cares how old they are? Again, I think sometimes we overvalue that when there's really no reason to value it. There's no value of Matt Ioannidis being only 29.5 because who cares? He might not be on the team next year, right? So let's look at his career in advanced stats. He graded out as a worse player than Shelby Harris last year, according to Pro Football Focus. Again, it's not a gospel, but he's been a consistent, like this has kind of been who he's always been. There's not the wild ups and downs with him. I think, again, if I had to choose between Matt and Shelby, I'm probably going Shelby. You could look at like somebody like Brandon Williams, who's more of a big guy. I don't think they're going to go in this direction. Somebody who's like 330 and above, just because that's what Siaki Ika is supposed to be here for, unless they want him to lose weight. And if they want Siaki Ika to lose weight, if they want him to get close to 300 pounds, they don't want anybody to be over 330 pounds. So that's just where the tea leaves are reading with that. So they bring in Shelby Harris. I think it would be a good signing if made. I would definitely encourage the Browns to do so. And I'm kind of surprised because, again, I talked about this in a video earlier this week that I can't act like the Browns are going to sign a defensive tackle in training camp when they've needed to do that for the last 3 years, and they just haven't done it. This is the first time they've done anything, and I mean anything, that resembles like they're interested in looking for a defensive tackle. And I know some people are going to bring up, they heard rumors on this website that the Browns might be interested or their agents reached out. But mostly, I'm going to be real with you, almost all of that stuff is garbage. Like the Browns never really reached out to Ndamukong Suh. They were never serious about Ndamukong Suh. And Ndamukong Suh was never really wanted to come to Cleveland, right? Like there has to be mutual interest. This is a real sign that there's interest from the Cleveland Browns and there's interest from Shelby Harris. We'll see if a deal gets made. I'll put it like this. If you don't hear anything by the end of the week, it's probably not happening. And the more days after the visit, usually, and there's no deal signed, that means it's more and more unlikely. If you don't hear a deal is imminent by Friday, it's probably not happening, but we'll see. This is a good sign, I think, no matter what, whether they get Shelby Harris or not. This tells me that the front office realizes that they need to make a more aggressive move and have a little bit of a more aggressive approach at defensive tackle. While getting Dalvin Tomlinson was nice, I really liked the signing. That's really all you got, right? We didn't go D-tackle heavy in the draft. We're still relying on Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai, who have proven themselves to be terrible the last 2 years. And I know Joe Woods, Jim Schwartz, and all that. But Joe Woods is not the reason that they were like, if they were just normal bad, those two, I would be like fine with it. They were abysmal. We're talking about sub 40 Pro Football Focus grades, F minuses. So I can't sit here and be like, oh yeah, those prospects, Jim Schwartz going to get his hands on them and make them decent. Like that's a ridiculous thing to expect. That's like me expecting Jim Schwartz to grab any person out the crowd and make them a great defensive tackle. Like some dudes just ain't got it, right? Randy Moss could teach Anthony Schwartz how to play receiver. That ain't going to make Anthony Schwartz any better at wide receiver, right? Like at some point it matters. It doesn't matter who's teaching. It matters who is just receiving the teaching. But That's my thoughts on this whole thing, the Shelby Harris visit. Let me know what you think. Do you want the Browns to bring in Shelby Harris? Are you not a fan? Are you worried about the money? I wouldn't be if it's late July. I promise you it's probably like 6 to 8 million 1 year if that deal gets made. And if the money's too much, it's probably not going to happen. Again, that's why I say the longer this drags out, that you don't hear anything, the more likely it doesn't happen. And it's usually like, it's a good sign from the standpoint of us knowing that they did the visit. But I don't want to say most of the time, I would say 55 to 45. When you hear about a visit, usually doesn't lead to a signing. Usually you hear they signed somebody before the news gets out that they visited. But if you hear that the player just visited and no signing, that usually means slightly more in the direction of not getting him. I don't want to dampen anybody's spirits or anything like that. I'm just trying to tell y'all what the trends are. It can still happen. 45% is a lot, but that's where they're at right now. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.